This build features insane clear speed by using two incredibly hard-hitting Falcon skills. Typically, skills like this would either drain your mana pool or have long cooldowns which prevent you from spamming them. However, in this video, you'll learn everything you need to know to forget about your mana pool and make these skills frequent enough that you may decide to simply hold them down. The best part is this can all be done without any build-defining unique items, meaning you can start enjoying this build whenever you like, and it will only get better as you progress further and acquire more gear. This is the Shift Shuriken Falconer. The gameplay you're watching is from a mid-levels 80 character, and it's absolutely decimating the empowered monolith. This is an excellent choice if you're looking to farm more unique items and convert them into legendaries. However, make no mistake, this build is an absolute beast when it comes to boss killing. Thanks to the massive amounts of cooldown recovery that we have within this build, it'll allow you to spam these skills on bosses, absolutely destroying their health pool. The concept is really simple. Every time we use shift, it'll actually throw out shurikens as well. This isn't thanks to the sleight of hand talent. In addition to this, within the shift tree, we're also going to get reduced cooldown. We'll gain 50% increased movement speed, we'll be invulnerable when shifting, we'll regenerate mana, we'll also gain health, and on top of that, if we get hit for more than 50% of our health, we'll be able to shift again. As if that proc is even needed, because we're looking at a shift that is just a little over 2 seconds regardless. The shurikens themselves have a really fast attack speed, and we can buff this further by using alacrity, and at higher levels we'll have more points invested into talents like Swift Assassin. All this attack speed allows us to quickly deploy the shurikens. We gain additional shurikens from both Fan of Blades and the talent flip of a coin. Our shurikens will also have Abrasive Arsenal, which has physical shred component to it, allowing our Falcon to deal more damage on the hard-hitting abilities. The node throwing star is taken just to allow our shurikens to go around us in a circle, and this just helps ensure that we guarantee a hit on a target every single time. The reason we want to ensure hits from our shurikens is because of the talent side by side and also the talent United Assault. This is going to reduce a portion of a remaining cooldown whenever we use a throwing attack that hits an enemy. Now there's an important difference to notice here. You reduce a portion of dive bomb's remaining cooldown when you use a throwing attack, side by side when you directly use a throwing attack. So the difference here is that with dive bomb we don't need to directly use the skill, meaning that when we use shift and the shurikens proc, it will reduce that dive bomb cooldown. Dive bomb is the harder hitting ability, so the more we can reduce this cooldown, the better. Dive bomb also has added damage applied at 850% effectiveness, which is absolutely crazy. This has the potential to scale incredibly high. This build is incredibly controller friendly just because of the massive damage and mobility that it has. However, with the keyboard and mouse, you'll have the ability to aim the dive bomb and the Falcon Strikes behind your character, which adds a lot of depth to the build as well. Benefit from some damage reduction while moving, which is just a huge benefit to this build since it's so effective at speedrunning all the content. As mentioned in the intro, this build has no build-defining uniques, so you can essentially use this build whenever you like. However, there are some items that will increase the power or output of this build. Any item that has flat minion damage is going to be a huge boost to this build. As you saw, Dive Bomb has an 850% effectiveness for the added damage, so scale this damage wherever you can. To further the ability of spamming our two main damaging abilities, you're going to want increased cooldown recovery speed on at least 2 pieces. This will really help the flow of the build. Aim for a pair of turquoise rings. This will allow you to get additional minion damage. The minion health is somewhat irrelevant in this build because the Falcon really doesn't take much damage, but the additional minion critical strike multiplier is going to be a big benefit as well. I would consider Talons of Valor to be the best in slot weapon choice for this build. However, as mentioned, it's not build defining, so you can use any type of weapon, whether you want to use sword and shield prior to that point or a different bow is up to you. Aim for things that are either going to buff your minion or apply debuffs to the enemy. In this case, I've opted to show a sword and board style just for the demonstration of the gameplay. Eric's Bones is a good choice. This can add some additional armor shred, furthering the damage that your Falcon can do. To cap your resist with this build using your idle slots for whatever is needed. In addition, if you have any openings, feel free to use an idle that's going to increase your minion critical strike multiplier or further the effect of the armor shred. A portion of your increased damage, a portion of your crit chance, and a portion of your critical strike multiplier are all going to be added to your Falcon. In addition to that, critical strike avoidance will be converted into minion critical strike multiplier, just furthering the benefit that this has for your build. It makes items like Woven Flesh particularly strong for this build, and Woven Flesh is an item that can be farmed off the very first timeline. There's an enormous amount of dexterity that you can get from the passive points alone in this build. In fact, you can find dexterity in the Rogue tree, the Blade Dancer tree, the Marksman tree, and the Falconer's tree as well. Not only will this scale the damage of your dive bomb, it'll increase your dodge, but the huge amounts of dexterity are a massive boost to your armor as well through your passive tree. Swift Connection is really strong for this build as well. This will allow us to continue to move while casting the dive bomb and the Falcon Strikes. Both Tailwind and Evasion will reduce the damage that we take while moving, just a huge boost to the survivability of this build. At higher levels, you'll be able to take dodge and parry as well. This will increase your glancing blow chance. Cloak of Shadows will also boost the glancing blow chance, and later, if you'd like to put points into poise, you can further reduce this as well. Pair that with the other usual tricks that rogue builds may offer, such as Silver Shroud, you're going to have a very tanky character. For the helm slot, I'd recommend recommend Peak of the Mountain. This is a very strong choice since the Falcon will gain benefit from this critical strike chance as well. This helm can be farmed through Lightless Arbor and even has a chance of dropping on tier 1 or the easiest difficulty. As usual, I'll leave a link in the video description where you can view all the information for this character. The remainder of these slots happen to be Weaver items, but you can certainly use a good rare or a solid exalted piece as well. For pieces that'll increase your dexterity, increase your minion damage, especially the flat damage wherever possible, increase your cooldown reduction, add your survivability whether it's through health or additional resistances. Overall, this character is very easy to set up and get going with this build. That brings us to the final skill, Decoy. The 5th slot in this build is pretty flexible. In fact, I've tried a lot of skills here and you're welcome to use anything that you have as a preference. Decoy can provide armor shred, which is useful when you're fighting the bosses, and that's typically the only time I actually use this skill. On top of that, you'll actually gain some additional critical strike multiplier. It's fairly small, but that will boost the damage output of your Falcon. Smoke Bomb can also apply armor shred if you want to go that route. On top of that, you'll get Dust Shroud, which will add a little bit to your defensive capabilities. Like I said, pretty flexible in this slot. As mentioned, Talons of Valor is the best in slot weapon for this build, and that'll make Aerial Assault a no-brainer for the traversal skill. Shift is consistent, it always travels the same distance, and it throws out that Shuriken, which reduces the cooldown of our dive bomb. Aerial Assault can drop Caltrops, and this counts as a throwing attack as well. However, it's much more difficult to hit the enemy and get that cooldown reduction on the dive bomb. On top of that, the travel isn't as consistent. You'll see there it's a little bit slow, but when you go further, it actually seems like the character moves quicker to that destination. When used on a controller, it seems to always travel the same distance, which isn't terrible. However, when you compare that travel time speed to that of Shift just moves you there quicker, in a sense is more efficient. As mentioned, make sure you pick up the Caltrops if you're choosing to go with Aerial Assault. On top of that, you can get 50% of your health recovered every time you use a skill. That's absolutely insane. Aerial Prowess, which can then be converted through Terror Wings, will give additional damage to your dive bomb since it's the only skill in this loadout that'll actually capitalize on that node. Similar statements can be made for Shurikens as opposed to Explosive Trap. Here you can see the throwing speed of the Shurikens compared to that of the Explosive Trap. Much more efficient in order to recover more cooldown by throwing quickly. By and far, the biggest negative of this build is the fact that we're spamming 2 Falcon skills. That means the screech that you're hearing from the Falcon will be heard very often, and since we're using means to reduce the cooldown of this will get very annoying for most players. If you can get past that, or prefer to just mute the sound, this will be an incredibly enjoyable and strong build for you to play. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.